You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
Well, all right, everyone. Welcome to the Warriors Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mike and Matt, and our special guest,
Jeff Miner.
Jeff Miner, for yet another episode. And what Jeff is going to talk about is performance anxiety for this episode. So I'll tee it up and I'll ask the audience, has anyone ever been in a situation, sports, could be work, your vocation, anything, an uncomfortable conversation perhaps, where it's somewhat high stakes and your level of anxiety is almost, I'll say, paralyzing, like a real inhibitor or an impediment to action. I think everyone has felt that at one time or another. We've all got backgrounds. Jeff's wrestler, much better than me. I was a high school wrestler, boxed at West Point. And there are times where you're like, holy cow, this is the championship match. There's a lot that rides on this. And if I don't perform at my best, I'm going to lose, or worse, I'm going to get the crap kicked out of me in front of, a whole bunch of, the entire Corps of Cadets, and then there's other stuff, combat, and some things that Matt was laying out for us previously where you don't get your anxiety under control. You're not going to perform at your best. And an aircraft falls out of the sky or crash lands. Bottom line, hey, whether it's an extreme example like that or a sports example, or it could even be job related. It could be, you've got to give a brief, or I think Jeff works with doctors and lawyers. So they're in the surgical suite, they're in the courtroom, expected to perform at their best. And if they can't keep that anxiety under control, it's going to impact them and keep them from showing up as their best. So if anyone in the audience can relate to that, and I'm sure all of us here in this room can, then give us a listen, and I'm sure Jeff is going to have some great techniques or ideas, or at least talk about certain topics that I think are going to help us navigate those situations and circumstances that we all find ourselves at one time or another. So with that, Jeff, I give it to you. What are your thoughts, man?
Well, my thought to start off with is, when I go out and I give this presentation on performance anxiety, a lot of times people say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Well, what I'm here to say is every single one of us out there are performing in some way. We are dealing with competing with other people for a job. We're dealing with so many in school for grades. Everything is a competition in a lot of different ways.
That's right.
So don't fool yourself and think that you're not a performer, because you are a performer. It's just how seriously you're taking it.
That's right.
And the more that's at stake, a lot of times the more people tend to make it more serious. Like, let's just go, I'll tell you, professional athletes, there's a lot at stake, a lot of money. A lot of money at stake in professional athletes, a lot of money in legal, a lot of lives at stake in legal. And then you talk about the military, and it's like your job daily is to perform. You better be on your game, or I'm sorry if you're not. And so what we want to look at is, so we got all this anxiety and pressure on us. What do you think that does to our performance?
Oh, I would think that it's an inhibitor, most certainly, for those that can't handle it. I just laughed, just a little bit of a sidebar. So, the Chiefs played, oh my Lord, I'm spacing. The Ravens.
The Ravens.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was that last play, I was reading about it, and Mahomes tells Coach Reed, put the ball in my hands. Because he's like, he had such supreme confidence. You put the ball in my hands, I will seal the deal. I will close this thing out. Whereas what you're talking about, I mean, I'm thinking of myself, I'd be like, oh my God, can't Isaiah Pacheco run it? Let him do it and take it, and I don't want to have to deal with that. But that's the difference between a guy that operates at that level, a Patrick Mahomes versus, I'll say, the average person. So
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's like, but if we consider ourselves performers, and let's just look at the military, let's look at vets and first responders. And it's like, you have had pressure on you your whole life to be a performer. And pressure to perform inhibits our ability to perform naturally and do our best. So what you've learned is you're in a constant state of, I'm not good enough. I've got to do it better. I've got to be exactly right. I can't make any mistakes. And that's unrealistic. So what happens to those people when they do make mistakes? They beat the crap out of themselves. Right. They are not happy. They go into depression. They feel like everything was my fault and my responsibility. So a lot of these people are coming back from wars, and the first responders are feeling like, I've let everybody down.
Right.
And their performers are going to win some and they're going to lose some. That's the way life works. Nobody wins everything.
Right.
So helping people to deal with loss, because most of us are afraid of losing. It's like, that's our best teacher out there. That's our best friend. That's like, loss and failing is how we grow and get better. Michael Jordan said, the only reason I'm the greatest is because I've missed more than everybody else.
That's right.
And so it all comes down to, a lot of times, and this is an interesting point, is we only have one thing in life that we can control. One thing, and that's our responses to how we handle situations.
Yeah.
It's like, am I going to be a victim with it, or am I going to be a victor? Is it poor me, or is it I'm going to do this? How am I going to approach this? And you can approach it any way you want, but most of the time, if we've got to be perfect, we're making up excuses, because you can't be perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. So you have to come up with justifications and reasons, and then it takes that pressure off you to become better. And so it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy of, I've got to be great, I can't make any mistakes, and I'm afraid to lose. You were afraid to lose earlier. You were talking about, I don't know if I want to do this. These guys are doing this. They're beyond us. It's like, are we taking our best shot? We may be taking our best shot, but are we afraid to lose? I'm not. I think this is the best venture, the best learning experience. Warriors Ascent, us pushing forward and doing all this, we're saving lives, but we are learning so much. Every single cohort, we've got research being done. We've got people watching and changing things and addressing issues. It's like, that's performance. We want to make it better.
Yeah, I think the mindset shift, which is important, like obviously Matt's teed up some personal stories and anecdotes wherein the stakes were exceedingly high, where it's truly life or death. And those are the ones where, you got to revert back to, your system one that we talked about and just your training.
Right.
But to be fair, most of life is not like that.
Right.
And that, I think, having the wisdom to know the difference that, yes, sure, life and death is one thing, got it. And then you're still, you sink to the lowest level of your training. But most people in most circumstances, when you really reduce it, it's, will I survive this? Yes. And to your point, quoting Nelson Mandela, I never lose. I either win or learn. Right. Some people don't want to hear that, because when you lose, you're losing money, or you're losing a championship, or you're using lives. I mean, that's the worst, of course. But in many circumstances, short of that, they're valuable lessons to be learned, and if in those circumstances, if you can make that mental shift, you're like, all right, I wanted a better outcome. I would have liked to have won, come out on top, but failing that, will I come back better because of it?
Bingo.
Right. I mean, I think the interesting or the difficult part is being in a you can't fail mission. Like
Right.
I can't mess up on a night vision dust landing. I can't mess up.
Right.
I mean, I might be able to bounce a little hard, but
Right.
there's very little room for error or losing. I don't mind losing a bet. I don't mind losing a
Right.
basketball game, but I mind that a lot. And so I took that mentality with me
Bingo.
everywhere, right? And so the problem was when I'm at home, I don't need that mentality,
Right,
but I'm
right.
bringing it.
But and that's what PTS does.
Right.
It puts you in that survival mentality in the worst case scenario. So you were there, you know what that was like. So your survival is like
Right.
amped. So in life going through, unless you learn some of the techniques that we're going to talk about in a little bit, meditation, yoga, relaxation on command, all these techniques, you're still going to be living in fight or flight until we learn
Yeah.
to control that little piece of our brain. And it takes some work.
Well,
It
and I
takes
think,
a lot of self-work.
It does. And I think what ends up happening is if you don't do something and a lot of time goes by with it, then it starts becoming, crisis level.
Bingo. Yeah. Because you start filling the need with other things, alcohol or
whatever,
food
yes.
or sex or gambling or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like I need to feel better.
Dopamine.
I need something.
Yeah,
Yes.
something.
Yes. And you're used to feeling like this.
Yeah.
In the military, it's like you're amped all the time. You've got
Yeah,
all
now
the
the swing to I'm not needed, I'm not important anymore. There's no value anymore.
right.
Even at home, I'm not even considered to be very smart. It's like, wow.
Right.
I mean, it got really hard to be that way. And I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way. And I think you could be that if you were a football player, if you were anybody, if you were a doctor, if you were somebody that,
Exactly.
a lot of people don't like to retire because
Right.
what do you do with yourself?
What next?
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
But when you have a hijacked, fight or flight system,
Bingo.
it's really difficult to go through life. And I have this standard for everyone and they aren't meeting it
Right.
ever,
Right. Because that's the way survival is. It's
Right.
like, you better be on your game because I'm counting on you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be there for everybody else. That was my thing. Because
Right.
everybody could count on me.
Right. Right. And what's that like? That doesn't add any pressure.
Right.
Everybody could count on me. That's tough.
Right. And again, I've been through a lot of therapy in this program, and I've seen a lot of other people go through it too, and realize that that's the one thing. I've heard it a million times. You have to put your oxygen mask on before the other
Right,
oxygen.
right.
It's like, yeah. That's what selfish people do. Heroes run towards it.
Right.
Heroes get in the cockpit and save the plane from crashing. That's what they do.
Exactly.
They don't put their mask
Right.
on.
Right.
It's like, what are you talking about? And now
that
it's like, okay,
mentality,
listen, I
though,
get it.
That mentality is great for heroes.
Yeah.
It's not great to live because then you're trying to please everybody and take care of everybody in general life, and you can't. It's impossible. You could take care of your crew emotionally and those kinds of things the best you could because you were in charge. But trying to do that with life, family, kids, everybody.
Well, now that I know that,
Yeah.
it's a lot more relaxing too. Pick your battles. All these things that I've heard throughout my life. You said 10 years you didn't believe all this stuff about. The same way. I mean, this isn't new information. It's, I think, presented in a way that I don't know, it was easy for me to take in as a veteran.
Right.
And of course, timing. I really needed it at the time
Yeah.
that I went to it. But ultimately, once you relax and let this stuff work and think it through, it's a lot better life.
Let me ask the difference. Like, you were a performer over there. You had to be on all that kind of stuff. What's it like now having to be a performer in a different way? It's for you. It's like, I gotta go exercise. I've gotta stop my use of drugs or alcohol. It's like, you're a performer now.
Right.
What's that like?
Well, it's difficult because, just like you said, I had a thing that was always, if that's good, more must be better. So I better try harder, and I better go, if working out 5 times a week's good, I better do 8. And, now I'm into like balancing it out and just, I have this thing now, I'm going to just have the best 50s of anybody's ever had 50s. So I'm in the middle of that. And every time I start getting grumpy or whatever, I think, somebody having the best 50s isn't going to get grumpy about that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I love that.
I mean, it's it becomes a choice. Like we
It
talked
does
about before.
always. It's your responses. How am I going to respond? Am I going to respond like poor me, or am I going to go after this?
Well, I don't know. It used to be I didn't feel like I had a choice because something would hit me and I couldn't control what happened. Like all of a sudden, adrenaline, endorphins, cortisol are just pumping in, and it's like, why? Why did that happen?
Right.
It just did. And then now what am I going to do with this? And normally it was not good.
Yeah.
Or I could go run, or I could go do something.
Right.
But sometimes I'd be in a position where it just turned into just all out not good.
Right.
And so that's not happening very often anymore.
What do you do for that? Because I think you're not alone with that. I think a lot of people can get by and but then all of a sudden that deep-seated anger, that the guttural response of the...
Now that I know, what I do is I start deep breathing.
Beautiful.
And I listen to our guru in my mind, Carrie Stewart from
Love
our
it.
program. And I start in with an 8-second inhale, and I hold it for 4 seconds. And I count 8 seconds exhale, and 4 seconds.
Beautiful.
And I spend my time counting and doing this. And I think that attention to that detail sort of takes your mind off it. And then I think you're hitting that vagus nerve. And, I think you're now doing physiological stuff. But I'll tell you, within about 7-8 cycles of that, I'm starting to think like myself again. And I'm like, all right. The shakes are starting to kind of, that's kind of when they come in. So I have to do some more to get that kind of going away. But then I'm in control of myself now.
Yes. So you have a process. And I think to the viewers out there, to the people listening, it would be awesome because that's what I do with athletes is, okay, that's going to happen. You're going to be anxious before a game. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? Breathing is usually one of the top, but we also have visual imagery. Go to a scene that makes you feel safe and practice that and go over. And so we have different exercises that we can do, but you got to have a system that is in place, or else when those happen, it's freaky because I don't know what to do about it.
I forgot I add that. I have a little spot in Costa Rica I go to in my brain
I love it.
during this. And it really does help.
I've got one little kid that likes mushrooms. Not little kid, he's 30. And he's got a mushroom house, and he goes there, and it's like, and the psilocybin mushrooms, he goes, so I can just pick them off the wall and eat them anytime, and then I can go on any trip I want to go on. Because it's in my mind. I'm like, well, wow. I guess that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
If that's your safe place. But I do think, and if we're looking at performance and dealing with the anxiety that comes with it, most of us deal and struggle with performance out there. So what do we do? You've got a technique, but what are other things that we can do to be able to, when that happens, control it?
I mean, there's a few. You talked about obviously the deep breathing, actuating your parasympathetic nervous system and all that stuff. That's very helpful.
Yes.
There's another thing I've heard wherein they say, this notion of, you're getting excited, anxiety, calm down. And yes, you can engage your parasympathetic within reason to a degree, physiologically. But then there's another thing to think about, just a subtle mindset shift. I know it's worked for me, whether it's public speaking or anything like that. It's rather than saying, calm down. It's a shift from, I'm nervous, I'm anxious to, no, I'm excited, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
And oddly, as
shift.
Pollyannish as that may sound, like, turn that frown upside down. It actually, your body, you're enervated, and you're like, all right, hey, here it is. And if you can say, no, I'm not nervous, I'm ready for this. I'm excited because, man, I'm ready to go. And oddly, that is helpful.
So you're talking about like the key to my whole program almost right there is I've got a 3-step program and it's called identify. Okay, I'm freaking out. I'm having doubt. I'm comparing myself, whatever it is. But you got to identify it, that that's happening. And then, and this is the biggest part, is most people want to run from feelings.
Right.
They've labeled them as good or bad. So if you're lonely or if you're scared, is that a bad or a good feeling? Well, it's neither. It's a feeling. Feelings aren't good or bad.
That's right.
We have labeled them as that. But what happens is if it's a bad one, we labeled it as, sad is a bad feeling. We try to tuck that, we try to avoid it. And that's exactly the opposite of what we should do.
Well, what's interesting, just very quickly, in that paper, that article that we were in, The Warrior's Descent, the Journal of Psychotherapy Integration, Dr. Leese wrote, he and his protege Corey, what he starts out by saying is veterans in particular, their coping strategy, their chief one, primary one, is avoidance.
You bet.
That's why they're like, no, I'm not going to talk about my emotions. I'm going to tamp them down. And we see
Right.
that in large measure at Warrior's Ascent. Brene Brown will say, if you numb one emotion with the intent that I don't want to feel that, I want to avoid it, know that you can't, if you numb one, you numb all. And that's
Right.
why so many people come to us, I'm not going to say borderline catatonic, but very unengaged.
numb.
But to your point, and then I'll give it back to
That's
you,
right.
is it's absolutely critical to not avoid that stuff, but say, what is it that I'm feeling? And there's usually a reason for that. You can't deny it, but if you can then assess it and go, all right, my body's reacting in a certain way because, I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm this or that, but can I channel that? Can I repurpose that? Whatever it might be.
I'm going to give you a thought with that is,
Yeah.
is one thing that I learned is if you feel that feeling without judging it, without trying to change it, without fixing it, you just learn to feel what that feeling's like. Like if it's anxiety or if it's fear, oh, it's located right here. Okay, I just want to feel what that feels like. And if you do that for 2 minutes, the fear actually goes away. The feeling will reduce. So it's like you start for 2 minutes, but you get better at it. You'll learn to feel your feelings immediately at some point, but most of us are trained not to.
Right.
I mean, militaries definitely don't have those feelings out there. You'd be stupid to have those kind of feelings out there, vulnerability, all that. So it's like they teach you to become numb. So it's like starting over and learning to walk into that feeling and not run from it. And that's why everybody drinks and smokes and uses drugs and eats and all the escapes that we have is I don't want to feel this feeling. I don't like this feeling. Well, that feeling isn't good or bad. It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
Well, see, here's another interesting point. We were having this, during the break, this discussion about, man, in special operations, they teach you this. They teach you how to, be an MMA guy. They teach you these mindset tricks. They teach you, and everyone you see all the time, learn the technique. Man, maybe some do, but so to your point, hey, they teach you to be. No, they don't. It's just expected.
It's expected, and it's how it works. It's
no, that's
not
exactly
like
it. I'm not dismissing what you're saying. What I'm saying is I think people think there's a block of instruction
Oh, yeah.
in the military
Don't feel.
where, all right, here's your don't feel emotion block of instruction.
Right.
Or don't do. No, what it is in order to do your job, people, I'll say experientially,
mechanism, yeah.
right, it becomes a coping mechanism. And for those that, they're like, all right, hey, I'll deal with that. Some people, I think, like so many skills or habits or beliefs in life, you adapt, you make that, and sometimes it's optimal.
Oh, yeah.
Like people do it the right way and they're like, all right, I've learned to deal with this productively. Maybe they had a great mentor, a great family. And then others, they learn to adapt to it suboptimally, like compartmenting that. So,
Well, I've been watching the military movies. You guys lived them. But it's like after the missions, they come back and they don't talk. They sat around and nobody knew what to say. And it's like, not that they should have, or not that I don't know what the right protocol would have been. Me as a therapist, hey guys, let's talk about this. Let's group up. What was that like for you today? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that because
No, we do this. we call them bloodbath after action reviews.
Right. Yeah.
And
But it's really
like,
geared more towards, okay,
kicking
what
your
went right?
butts.
What went
How
wrong?
much
Was it
did we
like, hey,
suck?
how you feeling, man?
you know, and we tear each other apart. That's why they're bloodbath. We say, get a thick skin.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so here's when we were talking about this, it's like I had to drop emotions because I'm a pretty nice guy,
Right.
for real. And if I'm flying with somebody and I really like this person as a person, but I think they're a terrible pilot and I have to ruin their career potentially,
Yeah.
I didn't care
Yeah.
at the time because I didn't have that emotion.
Right.
You know,
you didn't have the luxury.
I didn't have the luxury to have that emotion. So I was
Exactly.
able to just like go, you know what? When I put on this suit, I'm not this chewy teddy bear guy.
Right.
I'm this other dude that
Yep.
I don't, you know, I'm here to, you know.
You got to play that
Yeah.
role, man. You got to,
And
you got to play
It's
that role.
because I'm looking over at my company commander who's 12 years younger than me and doesn't know we're getting ready
Right.
to go into battle. And I'm looking around with these kids
I couldn't imagine.
and their young wives and their young kids and everyone's scared and nobody knows what to say to them.
Yeah.
And it's like socially, you know, it's like,
Oh.
then
man.
it's like, wow, we just like, we don't do a good job with any of this.
No. I can't
don't-
imagine
yeah.
that scene.
It's very like
Oh,
technically.
it was a horrible scene.
Technically
Not knowing what
focused,
to
doing
say
your
and
job.
looking at them and going,
I remember saying it, and I was like, I'm not the highest ranking, but I'm the most experienced. I'm the little guy, you know.
Right.
I'm the chief. So I'm like, listen, everybody, I know we're gonna bring these people home, and I promised those families right there
yeah.
that I'd bring them home.
Yeah. No,
They got me.
That's scary
Yeah.
because you don't know.
no, and to your point, where people, misconstrue or conflate, being good to your people or being nice or kind or so, oh, you're taking care of them, and then when you're hard on people, oh, you're a jerk, without realizing that, no, training people hard and holding them to a standard is the surest way to bring them
The only
back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that, aren't in that arena, they're like, well, you should have given that guy a pass, or, why were you so hard? And it's like, because you realize that is what's going to bring people home.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people have real issue with that. Like, you're just a toxic leader. It's like, no.
Well,
I mean,
then
right.
come on, man.
One thing is they're going to go right into this person's records and say, oh, here's a crash event. Oh, who signed him off on this? Oh, you did. Oh,
Right.
and not because of that, but that's a heavy thing to hang around somebody's neck if you really,
boy.
And this is not something I took, lightly. But so all these things I always said, well, I had a rucksack on, backpack, and I just throw all that kind of stuff in there.
Exactly.
And it's like, I'm the biggest procrastinator too. I'll get to it, but I'll do it and I'll be good at it. But it's going to be down the road, you know?
Right.
And I think you just don't know that the road goes really fast.
Exactly.
You don't know when you're in your
Right.
30s. You don't know when you're,
That's right.
late 20s. But next thing you know, in your 50s, and you're like, wow.
I still got this backpack full of shit,
Yeah.
and I could be unpacking that.
Well, and here's one of the things that I discovered is that it'll unpack itself on you.
In one way or another,
on
yeah.
One way or the other.
If you do it or it happens to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
I
great
didn't
point,
think that
man.
was the kind of thing that I was susceptible to, and so because I was that performer, that kind of stuff happens to the other guys and gals that don't
Exactly.
perform, but next thing you know, your stuff's happening and you can't explain it. And it's like, wow. I got into a lot of that EMDR,
You bet.
and that's, I don't know why it triggers a lot of memories that I hadn't dealt with.
You bet.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It's weird.
So in closing, takeaways, actionable stuff. So performance anxiety, what are your recommendations for people that are feeling that?
My thoughts are that you're going to deal with it. You got to identify it. You not got to run from it. You got to feel the feelings. You walk into the fears. What they say is feel the fear and do it anyway. But there's a step after that, and that is refocus. Because you don't want to just dive into the fear and then swim around in the fears and sit there with it all. It's like, I want to feel better as a result of this.
Right.
That's why people are taking the drugs and doing all that stuff, is they want to feel better. Well, we want a refocus, your safe place, a place that makes you comfortable, something that you can, and you want to put an anchor to it. So if I go to my safe place in my mind and I think about that over and over, and I do it several times a day for a couple months, when I touch my anchor, I automatically go there and I feel that. So if you put the steps together, I'm going to identify that I'm freaking out, I'm having anxiety, I'm having these feelings, and then I feel them without judging, without trying to fix, without changing anything, just genuinely feel that feeling and then refocus. So it's like you're taking care of that emotion, that fear, you're dealing with it, not running from it. Because typically we want to run. I don't want to think about that. That's too hard. Deal with that stuff.
Perfect.
Wow.
All right, so for those, again, that want more of Jeff, try performanceinstitute.com. So
More Jeff.
more Jeff.
More
right?
Jeff.
You can get more of Jeff at that URL. All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate you.
Thanks for
Jeff.
having me
Appreciate
here,
you.
guys. I
Boom.
love
Yeah.
it. You guys are rock stars.
Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. You know, we strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.